What if the truth you believe is not the truth but a carefully crafted lie? Have you ever stopped to think about the impact of disinformation campaigns on global politics? Disinformation, by definition, is the deliberate spreading of false information with the intent to deceive. It's not a new concept. It's been around for as long as humans have been communicating. But in the age of the internet, the reach and impact of disinformation have become exponentially more significant. Think of it like a game of telephone on a global scale. A message is distorted as it passes from source to receiver, and by the time it reaches its final destination, it bears little resemblance to the original. Except in this case, the distortion is intentional, and the repercussions are far-reaching. Disinformation campaigns are designed to manipulate public opinion, to sway the masses in favor of a particular narrative, often one that serves a specific agenda. They distort reality, creating a parallel universe where facts are malleable and truth is subjective. There are countless examples of disinformation campaigns throughout history. Take, for instance, the infamous Operation Infection during the Cold War, where the KGB propagated the rumor that the United States had created the AIDS virus as a biological weapon. Or more recently, the spread of fake news during the 2016 US presidential election, where false stories were circulated to influence voter behavior. It's a subtle form of warfare, where the battleground is the collective consciousness, and the weapons are words and images. And it's a war that's being waged every day on every continent in every language. One country that has significantly invested in disinformation campaigns is Russia. Russia's investment in propaganda and disinformation campaigns has been both strategic and substantial. Let's take a journey back in time and see how this all began. In the Soviet era, propaganda was primarily disseminated through state-controlled media outlets. The government would often control the narrative, presenting a distorted view of events to shape public opinion. However, with the fall of the Soviet Union and the advent of the digital age, things started to change. Fast forward to the era of Vladimir Putin's government, and we see a significant shift in strategies. The rise of social media platforms opened up a whole new world for propaganda dissemination. It offered an unparalleled reach and the ability to influence not just domestic, but also international public opinion. In the early 2000s, Russia began to recognize the power of social media as a tool for propaganda. They invested heavily in developing sophisticated online operations. State-controlled media outlets started to have a strong online presence, and numerous social media accounts were created to spread the government's narrative. By the 2010s, the shift towards digital propaganda became more apparent. The government started to utilize a variety of tactics, including the creation of troll farms, the use of bots, and the dissemination of fake news. These tactics were designed to manipulate public sentiment, sow discord, and promote the Kremlin's narrative. However, it's not just about spreading their own narrative. Russia has also been implicated in disinformation campaigns aimed at destabilizing other nations. For instance, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned of evidence suggesting Russia was planning to destabilize Ukraine from within, with reports of a coup plot involving Russians. Furthermore, a study by the European Commission linked changes to Twitter's safety policies to an increase in the reach of Russian propaganda. The dismantling of safety standards, including the labeling and de-amplifying of Kremlin-affiliated accounts, has allowed for a growth in the influence of Kremlin-backed accounts on the platform. These campaigns are not just limited to Russia, but have a global reach. By investing heavily in disinformation campaigns, Russia is not just shaping public opinion within its borders, but also influencing international discourse and perceptions. The tentacles of Russian disinformation campaigns extend far beyond its borders, affecting the global political landscape. Let's delve into a few specific instances where these campaigns have had a global impact. One such instance involves Elon Musk's X platform, previously known as Twitter. It was reported that changes to the platform's safety policies allowed for an increase in the reach of Russian propaganda. The European Commission study found that the dismantling of safety standards, including the labeling and de-amplifying of Kremlin-affiliated accounts, facilitated the growth of Kremlin-backed accounts' influence. Despite efforts by other social media platforms, such as Telegram and Meta, to limit Russian disinformation campaigns, the reach of Kremlin-aligned accounts has significantly expanded across Europe. This shows the pervasive nature of disinformation and its ability to infiltrate even the most robust platforms. Now let's look at another fascinating case of Russian disinformation, which took place during Germany's chancellery election. Annalena Baerbock, a popular candidate, faced a vicious disinformation campaign that included fake nude images and sexist attacks. This gendered disinformation, defined as deceptive content targeting women in public life, is another tool in the disinformation arsenal. It's a growing threat to democracy and national security, with women in politics, particularly from marginalized communities, being disproportionately targeted. This case is a stark example of how autocratic leaders, like those in Russia, weaponize misogyny to undermine elections in various countries. These instances illustrate how Russian propaganda and disinformation campaigns are not confined to domestic politics, but have a far-reaching global impact. These campaigns serve a dual purpose, promoting Russia's narrative and destabilizing foreign governments. This, in turn, creates a conducive environment for Russia to achieve its geopolitical objectives. The impact of these campaigns is deep and far-reaching. While it's easy to dismiss disinformation as harmless propaganda, the reality is far more complex and dangerous. Disinformation campaigns are not merely a nuisance. They're a potent weapon wielded to destabilize governments, influence elections, and sow discord among nations. Take Ukraine, for instance. The conflict with Russia has been escalating since 2014, with disinformation playing a significant role. Russia has been accused of using disinformation campaigns to portray Ukraine negatively, to the point where the Ukrainian president expressed concerns about a potential coup plot involving Russians. This is a chilling example of how disinformation can be used to destabilize a nation from within, turning its citizens against each other and against their government. But the impact isn't just political. Disinformation campaigns can also have a profound social impact, as seen in the case of Annalena Baerbock, a candidate for Germany's chancellery. She faced a vicious disinformation campaign, including fake nude images and sexist attacks. This gendered disinformation is a growing threat to democracy and national security. Moreover, disinformation can also influence public opinion on a global scale. Take the case of Elon Musk's changes to the safety policies of a social media platform. These changes have been linked to an increase in the reach of Russian propaganda, allowing Kremlin-backed accounts to expand their audience across Europe. The ripple effect of these campaigns can be felt beyond the borders of the country targeted, influencing global politics and shaping international relations. They foster a climate of mistrust and uncertainty, making it difficult for nations to work together and for citizens to trust their governments. In essence, disinformation campaigns are not just about spreading false information. They are about manipulating perceptions, influencing decisions, and shaping the course of events. They are a calculated strategy, a deliberate act of aggression, and a form of modern warfare. Russia's disinformation campaigns have become a tool of statecraft and a weapon of modern warfare. The battle against disinformation is not an easy one. It is a battle for truth and reality, but it's a fight we can't afford to lose. Governments, organizations, and individuals across the globe are stepping up their efforts to counter this insidious threat. The European Union has been at the forefront of this pushback against disinformation, implementing the Digital Services Act. This legislation imposes obligations on tech companies to address risks related to disinformation and other issues. It's an example of the kind of regulatory action that can be taken to hold tech companies accountable for the content they allow on their platforms. Meanwhile, other countries have taken a more hands-on approach. In Ukraine, a strong NATO partner, the government has received significant security assistance from the United States, a part of which is aimed at combating Russian disinformation campaigns that seek to destabilize the country from within. But it's not just about government action. Organizations too are doing their part. From fact-checking websites to media literacy programs, they're working tirelessly to give people the tools they need to discern fact from fiction. And let's not forget the role each one of us has to play. It's up to us to stay informed, to question what we see and hear, and to think critically about the information we consume. This is where media literacy comes into play. It's about understanding how media messages are created, why certain narratives are promoted, and what techniques are used to sway public opinion. So what can you do? Stay curious, ask questions, fact check. And most importantly, don't take everything you see or hear at face value. It's a simple but effective strategy to combat the disinformation that's all too common in today's digital landscape. While we may not be able to completely eliminate disinformation, we can equip ourselves with the tools to recognize it and challenge it. Remember, in the age of information, truth is the ultimate power.